Hi everyone, so this is my very first book haul. These are all the books I was going to read. Well, actually, not all of them are books I have read yet. It's just, for the footnote, I wanted to have a lot of books shown because some I read on the computer and some I went to the library to get and I had to return them. But anyway, I've read about 10 books. Yeah, I think that's right, from January to February. So now it's time for my very first wrap-up video. So the first book I read was one I read on the computer, and I read it in New Year's Eve, and I read it in 12 hours. I read Runaway by Meg Cabot, the last book in the Airhead series. To sum it up very shortly, Airhead is about a regular girl named Em, or Eam, I think, since her first name is Emerson, so I think that might be it, who one day has to save her sister from getting killed as a result of this bad equipment from Stark Enterprises, and she wakes up in the body of the Stark Enterprises supermodel, Nikki Howard. She doesn't know exactly why, except everyone has told her that she died and Nikki passed out while she was on stage, and so they had to do a brain transplant, otherwise there would be chaos and such, but there must be more to it. And meanwhile, there's so much love complications. This time it's not just a love triangle, it's like a love hexagon. And I don't always like love. I'll be talking to you about it more in my next book I'm going to review, but I read this book in 12 hours, like I said, and I couldn't take my eyes off of the pages. The reason that I really liked it, I think, is because it addresses events from the last book, in a way that Eam wasn't really trustworthy, and I never really thought about it that way, even though I paid really close attention and thought that sometimes in the last books she kind of was too secretive for all the wrong reasons. And it has, at the start, one of the most effective arguments I think I've ever read, and there are quite some airheads in the world, but in the long run, I think that Runaway is the best possible conclusion to the Airhead franchise. So next is Tiger's Curse by Colleen Houck, or Hook. I don't really know how to say her name, sort of like Tahara Mafi, or actually, yeah, I do know how to say that name. But yeah, I picked up Tiger's Curse because praise was, these books may cause you to forget anything else exists until you've turned the last enthralling page. Well, let me tell you, this book is anything but enthralling. I don't think I would recommend it on my worst enemy. I admit, there are some clever magic tricks like the Percy Jackson series, like mirrors that if you look into them too much you go into them or something, and I don't know, it's original. And it shows Indian culture, but maybe a little too much, and let me tell you, it's not really a fantasy in my opinion, it's a romance. And let me tell you a problem that I have with general romance novels. They tend to start off with a big storyline, and you're curious as to where the climax will go. And then the main character meets a boy or girl, and it's often insta-love, but I feel that a reason I don't really like romance that much is it tends to get in the way of the actual story, and knowing about the first time you were in bed is not as exciting and seems a little bit too taken back. And Tiger's Curse does it tenfold. I felt that the main character, Kelsey Hayes, was pretty bad, if you ask me. A lot of people have said that a lot of female characters in literature these days are very wimpy. I disagree, but in Tiger's Curse, I think it is exemplary on the argument that they are. She's always picking the wrong choice, and Colleen Houck seems to have more hikes than there are action scenes, and more kisses than there are hikes. And she doesn't seem to know, I think, how much hiking it takes to walk an hour or 3 hours, and whenever there's a big climax, whenever there's a big cliffhanger of a chapter, it pretty much disappoints all the time. There is a nice chapter about 100 or 200 pages in, but I kept waiting for it to get better, kept waiting for an antagonist to show up, and yeah. No, sorry. The next book is Shatter Me by Tahereh Mafi. Well, I bet you probably expected me to have this on the list since I mentioned her name before. But anyway, I've heard that Shatter Me is a very love it or hate it experience, and for me it was actually in the middle. I did enjoy myself, I have to admit. I also read Unravel Me, and yeah, they were library books, and I'm going to start Ignite Me soon enough. And which one did I like better, Shatter Me or Unravel Me, you might be asking? Well, I would go with the first one, Shatter Me. In all honesty, I didn't like Unravel Me as much because, but Shatter Me set up some great characters, and they aren't really utilized here except for Kenji, oh, and Juliet, Adam, and Warner, but there are a lot of side characters we were introduced to at the end, and I was hoping to figure out more. And, but anyway, on to Shatter Me first. What I enjoyed about it was it had an original dystopian feel. Like Elsie Chapman's Dueled, where kids die every day and, well, kids die every day at the hands of their twins, that was original. It was a bad book, but original. Shatter Me is original, yet good at the same time, about the re-establishment. Now, one flaw I found in Unravel Me was I wanted to find out if the re-establishment actually was hoarding off resources like Juliet said people theorized they did. But anyway, I found Shatter Me's love relationship to sometimes get a bit overboard, but never like Tiger's Curse, and I found the relationship between Juliet and Adam kind of comforting. I especially loved when Adam confesses that he had always been watching Juliet and seeing all the nice things she's done for people, but her touch has always been in the way. And I enjoy the fact that, spoilers, it takes place at the start in a prison, so you're automatically plunged into the story, whereas most stories start off a bit tediously, and about 18 chapters in, you're locked up. I don't know. By the way, this counts for Shatter Me and Unravel Me both. The cross-out writing, I had never seen that before, and I don't think there are any other books that do that, and I really like that style, because it lets us theorize what Juliet is thinking without her telling it straight to us. We can look at the book, we can read it, and then we can imagine it for ourselves. We can imagine words coming out ourselves. And that is pretty magical for books. I mean, I'm a 17-year-old boy, I'm a nerd who reads, I use the word magical, what a dork I am, you'd probably be thinking. Well, I guess so, Well, I'm getting off topic, but anyway, the Shatter Me series is, for me, half and half. Shatter Me was great, Unravel Me was okay, I admit. It was a page-turner. And honestly, I don't really know if she's gonna end up with Adam or Warner now, because, I think Unravel Me is the first book to have a relationship, a love triangle, where you don't know how it will end up. And you honestly don't. They're teams. It was an interesting experience. The next book I'm going to be talking about is Laughing Wolf by Nicholas Mace. It was at my school library and I never picked it up because it looked sort of lame. I don't know, maybe because I had never heard of it anywhere. But then I picked it up and I gotta say, at the start it was sort of ish, but then when it picked up into the adventure, it was a very, very good read for me. It's about a boy named Felix who's from the year about 2243, and it's an accurate enough representation, a bit tedious of a representation, but he's actually one of the last few kids in the world to carry books, and I guess you can sort of imagine why, considering these days books are becoming more and more expensive to print, and the day may come where we can't print books anymore. I mean, I'd hate that, but it's kind of nearing the day. But anyway, it's a time travel book. Sort of like Ruby Red by Kirsten Gier, it has a very clever theory about how you can time travel, about particles that travel faster than the speed of light, and utilizing them. I mean, there might be particles that travel faster than the speed of light. I mean, it's been a very long time since I've taken a science course about that, but I mean, it's a book that made me think that way, and I'm never going to forget that the Romans cherished cinnamon now, and I think maybe it would be better if Laughing Wolf was a trilogy. I wouldn't mind if it was a trilogy. It seemed to be 3 stories all crammed into one, and I think that's what helped make it fast-paced. So, yeah, I longed for more, but I think that readers will get a kick out of it if they want something short yet huge. Know what I'm saying? Maybe you are. Next is Crusher by Niall Leonard, or at the start I thought it was Neil Leonard because I didn't pay attention to his name much, just the thought of what does it take to catch a killer. It's about a boy named Finn McGuire who ended up dropping out of school because of some drug problems. He can't really read that well. He has a very, well, I wouldn't say bad father, more like poor and hopeless father who used to be an actor, used to be a screenwriter. Now no one wants to read them. He's laid down, and Finn has to work at this snack shop, or I mean restaurant, I mean intended in that order. That's sort of satirical of all of the big name joints that are around today, because the name sounds sort of like it's meant for the dump. It sounds like a restaurant that my mom would avoid. But anyway, one day his dad is killed, and Finn actually isn't really that sad, but he decides he has to know who did it, and in all honesty, it's a murder mystery. And it really throws a lot of punches, and it is actually a very deceiving one. What I like in a mystery, like Life or Death by Michael Robotham, is when you have hints, and when it reveals it, you might have actually imagined that. You might have sat down, took the book away, and thought, who could be behind that? What's the list? And without getting some hints later on. And Crusher was a lot like that. It wasn't perfect. The ending was a little bit, really? Did you have to do that? After the mystery was, spoilers, solved. But anyway, I was intrigued with the mystery. There was actually a lot of action, and I instantly bought the book Incinerator, and I'm going to be reading it when I head to Costa Rica in a few weeks. The next book I wanted to talk about was Firefight by Brandon Sanderson. I remember in my top 10 books of 2015 so far video, I included this at the end as potential books that might make the list later, but it never got into paperback, and I always didn't want to buy it until it came to paperback. I guess I was sort of a cheapskate that way, but I really wish that I bought it in hardcover, because it would have made my list, and it'll probably make my best list in December this year. Because obviously, its predecessor, Steelheart, made my top 10 list, and Firefight was even better. I no longer find David's love interest, Megan, annoying. It really improved on the love relationship. I found the new epic powers, the new epics, really cool. It takes place mostly in Babelar, I mean New York City, once again I mean intended, and it has a very interesting antagonist, or secondary antagonist, Regalia, and really asks the question, what would life be like if murderers were on the loose but they could do whatever they want, and what would it be like if you were living in a flooded place where there was an epic that could control the water, and therefore basically control the whole city depending on her attitude. I admit, it did take me a little while to read it, but that was because every chapter was really satisfying. And I can't wait for Calamity. It's out now, I think, but there's so much else that I have to read, and I have to pick a college and apply for residence soon, so once again, I might, just like how I avoided Firefight because of the hardcover thing, I might not, but somehow I think that I'll live to regret it. So, in short terms, I recommend the Reckoners series. The next book is called Virals by Kathy Ricks. It's in a 5 or 6 book series, I don't really remember. But this was a book that sort of felt it went better the more it went on. I don't really know what to call this book, whether it's a thriller, a mystery, or a murder mystery, but one more like Crusher with action, or a mystery where you have to put the pieces together yourself and then find out at the very end. Because just like Crusher, I really didn't see it coming, and the first half is sort of 4 kids, Tori, Hiram, for short, Ben and Shelton, saving a dog from a compound because they know that it's really hurt. Tori Brennan loves dogs, and it's under the captivity of someone called Marcus Karsten. And then they find out about a murder that happened in 1969 of Catherine Heaton. I don't think I've ever read a book where it was a mystery from that long ago. Well, Life or Death was that sort of mystery, but it was a 10-year difference. This one is about a 45-year difference. But it didn't make it any less compelling. It wasn't flawless, but the more I was with the characters, the more I was interested in them. The four main characters and all the classmates as well. What I liked about Virals as well was that people were after them, but yet they could still stay on the island. And I feel that if this sort of thing happened in real life, then the kids would sort of want to stay nearby. I don't know. Maybe. And it might go to other places in the next few books. I haven't read them. I'm going to read Seizure sometime, but Virals didn't seem like the sort of series starter after its non-cliffhanger, but oh well, it was easier to read the more it went on. Next is Leviathan by Scott Westerfeld, and man, this book is very heavy. It's the heaviest one I've ever had. It's like 5 pounds. But this is one of those like scrap metal books, I think. Steampunk's the right word. It has 2 side stories, and every 2 chapters it shifts between the 2 characters. It's sort of like they're the narrators, or someone who knew them well is the narrator. The first story is about a prince named Alec whose parents are killed, and he has to be escorted out by this giant metal contraption. Let me show you something. I don't know if you can see it, but this is basically a map of Europe, but it's so steampunk, it's so metal. I don't know if this is, I would call this a fantasy book or a war book, because it does have facts related to the First World War. It basically goes in that order, but in it there are hydrogen breathers, there are hydrogen-breathing beasties, and all this machinery that does feel like it would have been made in the First World War, I admit, but was obviously not made. It's sort of like a world of monstrous iPhones with a 1914 cling to them or rub to them. And the other one is like Mulan, a girl impersonating a boy to join the army. Darren, who poses as a boy named Dylan. And let me just say, am I gonna read the rest of this series? I don't know. I might. I will admit, there were a lot of times where my mind wandered. The writing is really interesting. There are so many words that are related to engineering that it's like all the fun of unrigging a bomb the size of a house. It's interesting. You don't really know what's going to happen, but it is pretty complicated, I will have to admit. But I think that just the right amount of words were on each page. I know I don't criticize books for how they're layered. I criticize books for how much I enjoy reading them. But I think sometimes it's easier to read one book than another because of how it's laid out. Like Shatter Me was pretty easier to read than Tiger's Curse. I think it helped that Shatter Me didn't have as many words on each page, so I felt the progress. And I haven't read a picture book in a long time, except you could count the 10th Diary of a Wimpy Kid book. But yeah, Leviathan has great drawings. They're illustrated by Keith Thompson, and I'm now interested in seeing what else he has in store, because they really help with the descriptions. They're really fun to look at, and they help you feel the progress and see the world better. So, we're almost done. The last book I'll be mentioning is Gabe Johnson Takes Over by Geoff Herbach, or Herbach. Once again, I am not really sure. Yeah, I haven't finished reading this yet, but so far it's pretty awesome. I know authors should never use the word awesome. It's too informal, but I mean, you know what I mean when I say the word awesome. You know what everyone means when they say the word awesome. It's not as awesome as Struck by Lightning, which was also a school book and was this close to being my most favorite book I read in 2015, only surpassed by Prodigy for one reason or another. Because Struck by Lightning was hilarious. It was so relatable, it was dark, and it never backed down, just like its protagonist, Carson Phillips. This one is about a chubby kid named Gabe Johnson. Gabe Johnson takes over, hence the title, who steals money from a pop machine, is taken into custody, and he has to tell the story sort of in second person, as we are Mr. Rodriguez, his lawyer, about why he stole from the pop machine, and I have to say, it's a lot more to it than just stealing $17.75. I really like how, just like Struck by Lightning, it does have a very good charm in its writing. It doesn't have as much of an important plot, I will admit, but it really did make me think, just like the praise suggested it would. It made me wonder if bullies just think you're lame because you don't really talk to them. I don't know. Because there are some bullies in this that become Gabe Johnson's friend when he lashes out and promises to fight for them, because aka he was originally fighting for himself and for his rights. And while it's not really that much of a big deal, the marching band, it seems upset that he was betrayed of his honor. And this is the same sort of thing I'm writing in the 721 Chronicles, about how to some it's not really a big deal. It's like having your Uno game stolen. But in the long run, in the principle, you should have fair rights and you should fight if you can. And well, Gabe Johnson was also very funny. It was a lot easier to read than Leviathan. It is a lot easier to read than Leviathan. I'm probably going to finish it today or tomorrow. But anyway, that's my wrap-up. The next few books I'm going to read are Ignite Me by Tahereh Mafi, and The Glass Arrow by Kristen Simmons, and Incinerator by Niall Leonard, The Fifth Wave by Rick Yancey, maybe Shadow and Bone by Lee Bardugo. I know there's a lot I have to read, and I've made myself very busy ever since I became a book critic, but it's a lot of fun, and I get like 100 or so visitors on Weldon Witness every day, and happy reading, and I hope I intrigued you to buy one of the books I got. If it's Tiger's Curse, good luck with it. And if you enjoyed it, that's awesome. And, yeah, this video was fun to make. I hope you enjoyed watching it.